The Sparkbox HTML and CSS task force recently put together a coding challenge for our team. And these are just an opportunity for us to learn about something together. All of our different task forces will do these from time to time. And these are usually just something that we can do pretty quickly over a course of an hour or so. We might send them out at the beginning of the week and then get together at the end of the week. This particular time, we got together today and put something together, and then all got together and talked about what we put together and how we did it. Each of these code challenges usually comes with like a prompt or a thing to do or implement. The HTML and CSS task force gave us this idea, which was to build a newsletter sign-up form, which in and of itself isn't super interesting, but it's a small thing. It's pretty self-contained, something you can do in an hour without too much trouble. And they provided some ideas for focuses of learning. So we'll probably share out the code challenge at some point, and you'll get the video, the introduction itself, and you can listen to all that. But some of the ideas that they had for learning were if there were any new CSS properties, focus within was one of them that was mentioned. If you wanted to play around with a new framework that you've never tried before, maybe you've never used like Tailwind or something like that, and you wanted to give that a try, those are things you could use along with doing this, so that you could just see, what do those things look like. So a topic to learn about or a prompt to learn about, the newsletter sign up form, and then pick something that you want to learn as a part of that. So I'm actually interested in some accessibility things and how accessibility works on the web. I've used Voiceover on my iPhone before, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I can test out pages and see how well the experience works for folks using Voiceover on our websites. But I don't do that too often on my Mac. So I don't really know what that looks like on my Mac. And so I wanted to play around with setting up Voiceover. I haven't done that yet. And I also want to see what the experience looks like with different ways of setting up a sign-up form for the browser. So what I did here, instead of building out the form myself, what I wanted to do is I wanted to just grab a couple from off the web. I took MDN. MDN's got a form out here with a field set in it. This is documentation. I know that folks are out there as they learn or find new fields or elements or ways of doing things, try to solve problems. They're probably using these as like the baseline for things they implemented. They're taking it as industry guidance that this is the best way to do it, to build out forms. So I thought I'd use their example and see how well that works with Voiceover. I know The Guardian here at the bottom I found has like a little sign up form, which is like a news website. So that's interesting. Then we also know a lot of people are buying groceries and things like that online. So I thought I'd take a look at Walmart's. They've got at the footer a newsletter sign up. Theirs is a little different. Theirs uses a placeholder text and this little hovering label. So I'm curious if JavaScript is having an interesting impact or like changing, I guess, what Voiceover responds with. So I thought that would be a neat one to check. To do all this, I don't really want to navigate all the way through MDN or Walmart's website or anything like that. So what I was going to do is I was just going to take the bare bones markup, strip it out, and put it into a simple web page. So I've got a little web page up here, index.html. I'm not even hosting a server or anything like that. And I've got my editor over here on the left side. And I'm just going to drop these little snippets of markup in here. It might not be a one-for-one comparison, but it should be pretty good, I think. So I've also mentioned that I haven't set up Voiceover, so we'll have to do that together here. All right, so let's go over here to MDN. There's actually a bunch of examples on MDN of little form techniques and snippets and things like that. I know from using Voiceover on my phone, one of the things that's really important is that if you're just listening to what's going on from Voiceover to tell you where you're at, you usually need prompts that describe where you are and what you're supposed to be doing. So I thought this field set one would be kind of neat. So I'm going to copy this. Come over here and we'll paste that in here, clean it up a little bit, and then refresh our browser. So here we go. Again, not a newsletter form, but should give us an idea of what MDN is providing from a Voiceover perspective. All right, so now we gotta get Voiceover working, and I have no idea how to do that on my Mac. So I'm gonna start with, I use Alfred. It's kind of like Spotlight, but usually if I type something in here, like voice, the voice stuff will come up, and I see this first thing here is a utility, and I would have kind of thought that Voiceover would be something you set up in your settings or your system preferences. And if I if I do, for an example, like if I want to change my sound preferences, you'll notice that this is in Preferences pane's sound. That's a system setting. If I open that up, it's going to open up the system preferences. But when I do voice here, this is a utility, which is kind of weird. So, but let's go in there. This might be the way it gets set up. No big deal. All right, so we've got the VoiceOver utility. We got a whole bunch of options over here on the left, and this is the general settings for VoiceOver. And it says, speak the following greeting after login, which isn't super, we're not helpful here. We've got key, okay, here, let's see if this is it. So key to use VoiceOver modifier. So control or option or caps lock. So maybe if I hold control option down or double click it, that doesn't seem to be doing anything. We've got verbosity, speech. You can mute speech, but not really turn it on. Here we go. We've got web. That seems to be more about the way that VoiceOver is going to do its thing on the browser. We got activity. So this doesn't seem to be providing anything interesting. Let's go into preferences. I feel like this is the right place for this. So there's accessibility. Let's just type voice. Here we go. Turn VoiceOver on and off. And that is in, let's find out. So it's in accessibility. So it did that little, you might not be able to see it. Okay, so it dropped us down into VoiceOver under accessibility, and here's enable VoiceOver. And it looks like to toggle VoiceOver, quickly press Touch ID 3 times. So I have the touch bar, right? And hold the command button. So here we go. All right, let's turn this on. So VoiceOver is on theoretically. And there's, okay. So interesting, you can't hear what I'm hearing right now in my headphones, but it just said Firefox a whole bunch of times and something about web content. And it looks like it's typing out the same things here that I also see on, or here in my headset. So that's kind of cool. So, okay. So it's also telling me some options here. Control, Option, Shift, down arrow. So that's a whole lot of keys to modifier keys. Okay, but this is allowing me to, so Control, Option, Shift allowed me to jump in, but then it says in text fruit juice size. Okay, cool. And that's just with hitting Control, Option, down arrow, but I can't get out of that. And I can get out of text. All right, what about the tab keys? Okay, so that took me back. So I'm all over the window now. But the tab key seems... So now I'm in... You are currently on a text element. Small radio button. Medium. So as I go along, it's reading... So small, medium radio button, small radio button. So, all right. So I can tab around here, not too bad. So it gives me some good information. It doesn't do, at one point it read fruit juice size to me, but when let's pretend like we're coming into this thing for the first time. So now I'm in web content, and that's what that black border is here. And if I hit tab, so when I hit tab, it takes me to fruit juice, but it all of a sudden goes down to small. So I never really get a good idea of why I'm here. But it is kind of cool. It is kind of neat that I get the word small when I get the radio button. And my guess is if we look, I'm going to actually disable for a second. I'm going to disable VoiceOver. So now VoiceOver's turned off. It's really distracting in my ear to be able to try to describe what's going on while also hearing from VoiceOver. So if I look over here at the markup, this field legend doesn't really seem to be having much impact. At one point it did say those terms, but I don't know how it got there. I'm also hearing when I get to the input, I'm actually hearing the content of the element, I think. So let's come over here and make sure. Small potatoes. All right. We'll refresh this and let's turn VoiceOver on. This is kind of nice. I'm using that shortcut. So I'm holding Command and hitting Touch ID 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And it takes few seconds, it looks like. Maybe I didn't hit it fast enough. Let's try that again. VoiceOver, there we go. So now I'm in the web content. It tells me I'm in the web content. So let's hit tab. Okay, so good. That text that it's reading here, small potatoes, is coming from the label, which is really neat. All right, so that's not bad. We don't get the context from the legend, but that's not too shabby. So let's delete this. Let's go down. Let's do the implementation from Guardian and see what that looks like. So now we're going to do an actual newsletter sign up. Whoop. Just jumping around. Ads, I'm sure. So we'll do inspect element on that input. Here we are. And here's our form. We'll copy this HTML comment. Control C will do that for you too, but I'm just going to copy outer text. And we'll put that in here. All right, so there's our, and this is pretty ugly, so let's clean it up a little bit. At least the tabs will clean up. And we see we got a form here. All right. An input. Oh, this is a hidden input, a CSRF token, which is like kind of a security thing. And then we've got 3 elements here. And they all seem to have to do with email. And I'm looking at like the classes and the type down there. Right? Type is email here. Here we got to type text name. But it's still called, like, the ID is footer, email, sub, whatever, a bunch of stuff going on there. And then we've got our another one here. This one's hidden. So we've got an email input, a text input, and a hidden input. Okay. So, and then we've got our button. And the button here is sign up. Let's see here. I'm curious. Let's see if the word news even shows up. So in this little snippet for the form, the word news doesn't even show up, all right, at all. So that's something interesting. So let's come over to the browser. We'll refresh. All right. So here we've got a couple SVGs. We've got email. There's 2 inputs, which makes sense because if you remember on line 19 here, we've got 1 input, another input, and then this one's a hidden input. So, all right. And then our sign up button. So let's turn on VoiceOver and hear what this one sounds like. So I hit Touch ID 3 times while holding Command, and there it comes. And I'm going to refresh this page. Here we go. So now I'm in web content. It told me I'm in web content, and it's telling me about all my options. So Control Option Shift, we'll do that. Control Option Shift down arrow. All right, so now I'm on an image, and I can't do Control Option Shift down again, so I'm going to try Tab here. All right, so it told me I'm in the email address text input. All right, and then I can go, I guess, to the next one. And so this one is called a text field, but it called it space. So it didn't tell me what this even is. So if I'm a VoiceOver user, I ran into this input element, and it was called space. Not super helpful. And if we hit Tab again, we get to the sign up button, and that's what it calls it, the sign up button. So at no point have I've never heard what this is called or why I'm being asked to input my email address or why I have a sign up button. So let's disable VoiceOver. So VoiceOver is off now. So one thing I'm getting is I'm getting a lot of prompts from VoiceOver, and then I'm getting a lot of instructions. And I know that when I've used VoiceOver on my phone, I've not gotten those instructions in the same way. I kind of had to learn those on my own. So it's kind of nice that it prompts me with those, but it's getting really hard to hear where I'm at over the instructions. So I want to go into VoiceOver, and I don't get a whole lot of instructions in here. Let's go back down to the utility and see if I get some options for playing with this stuff. So I'm getting a lot of prompts telling me what I'm in, the fields that I'm in, things like that. And I'm getting like these instructions on how to use VoiceOver. So let's play with maybe it's verbosity here. What is this? So that's a lot. I'm going to ignore that. I'm guessing. So one of the things that I think is important is like most users don't modify settings. So I don't really want to change a whole lot but I'd love to get rid of those instructions. I'm guessing those are pretty annoying for users too. So I don't know what this means to change high to low. I'm guessing it changes all of these things. But nothing in here tells me about instructions. It's more about elements and combo boxes and buttons and things. What is hints? So when an item has help tag, speak the help tag. Oh, that's interesting. We might play with that a little bit. Speak instructions for using the item on the voiceover. So this sounds like what I don't want. So let's do that. We'll check it. And I bet it seems like it's a live setting. So let's go ahead and 1, 2, 3 and re-enable voiceover. So it tells me on Firefox, window email, and it says text has keyboard focus. So let's hit tab, space text. Oh, this is so much better. I'm no longer getting those instructions on hitting Control Option Shift down. So let's refresh the page and see what happens. Web content and no instructions. So much better. I can still use Control Option Shift, I'm guessing. Yep, it did. It dropped me into the image and I can tab through it. Great. This is much better. So it's giving me the context. It's telling me where I'm at as a VoiceOver user, but I'm not getting all those extra VoiceOver instructions. So let's close that out. I think we can close this out too. All right, so this is the Guardian's sign up form for their newsletter, and it's pretty brutal, right? It's got the email address. I don't know why I'm being asked to input my email address. It's got this extra space thing going on here, this extra input that is called space. And then the button itself says sign up. That's cool, but I don't know what I'm signing up for. So let's disable VoiceOver for a second and come over here, and we're gonna go ahead and delete this content, and let's do Firefox's. Let's do Walmart's sign up form, right? This is the one that has the placeholder, and when you go in, it gets that little floating, hovering label thing with the sweet animation. So, all right, let's inspect element again. And I'm on the input. Let's find there's our form. Copy it. And now we got it. So we'll head back over to our editor and paste it in there. And ooh, look at that. So they are cleaning up their markup, which is nice. But maybe we can clean this up a little bit. So we're going to run npx prettier, and there's a write file option, I think it is. File and then index.html. And if you run prettier, the little command line, and so npx is going to run a node module for us, node CLI module. We're going to run prettier with write file, and that'll modify this and write it back to the original file. So let's give that a try. Oh, that's not the right one. Let's see. That it's right. Really want to, it's just dash right. Oop, there we go. And then index. All right, so now that we've cleaned up this file, I hope, let's see what it looks like. There we go, a little better. They've got a bit of markup going on here. The word news shows up, so our last search for news is showing the word newsletter shows up. So there's that. Oh, that makes sense because this is on the placeholder. The other place that news showed up was down here. So it looks like on their input button, right, their submit button, they have an ARIA label for sign up for newsletter, which, all right, that's pretty cool. Let's hear how that sounds. Our form doesn't have anything interesting going on. We've still got an input here of type email and a label for that input. So pretty standard form. All right, let's come over here, refresh it. Cool, very progressively enhanced form. The form by itself, there's the placeholder text, we've got a label, and we've got a sign up button. So even without CSS, it looks functional. Let's turn on VoiceOver, refresh the page real quick. So it takes a few seconds for VoiceOver to kick in, I think. There we go. So it says web content has keyboard focus. And we know that if we hit tab, we'll get in here. So now I'm being told, hey, email address, this is a text field. And there's our ARIA label. So we've got sign up for newsletter button. So cool. So at least, as a user of VoiceOver, I'm getting to this email and I don't really know why I'm being asked for my email, but at least when I go to the next element, I'm being told sign up for newsletter. So I can make some inference that like, hey, that previous field was probably what they were asking me about. It'd be nice if like maybe this said email address for newsletter, right? But it's not too bad. Actually, let's play with this. Let's do that. Let's turn off our VoiceOver here for a sec. I'm going to take this placeholder on the input and make it an ARIA label. So, all right, we'll do that. Refresh, and let's give it a try here. So VoiceOver. All right, so when we tab, we're going to go into the input. Oh, and you know what? This ARIA label is on the input, but if you remember, VoiceOver reads the label for the input, not the ARIA label for the input. Well, let's see what happens. Yep, I guess I expected that. It's still reading the label. It is not reading the ARIA label. So let's turn VoiceOver off again. VoiceOver's off, and we'll move this down to the label. Move this over a little bit. All right, so the ARIA label's there. Now on the label, let's give it a try. VoiceOver back on with my 3 clicks of Touch ID. VoiceOver's on. I'm on web content. You can see the border. There we go. Enter email for weekly newsletter. So yeah, that's nice. That's actually really good. So my label still says email address. My placeholder, which is only useful for sighted users, is in there. And then I give the non-sighted, the VoiceOver users, kind of the same experience that our sighted users with an ARIA label on the label. And if I jump down to sign up, so I'm giving them a lot of context. So the Walmart one isn't too bad, but we could have maybe helped out by adding that ARIA label. All right, let's shut off VoiceOver. So what did we learn? So we learned a couple of things here. So first off, we learned Walmart sign up, not too bad, but the placeholder text is not read to users. So this nice little verbose prompt here for folks, call out for visual folks, is nice, but it doesn't kind of extend to VoiceOver users. But the sign up button with the ARIA label gave us context. That was great. The Guardian one, we had all kinds of goofy issues. Not a progressively enhanced form, so there were 3 inputs. 2 of those showed up. One of them we didn't understand. It was called space. I don't really know what that is. They probably had some JavaScript they were doing with that. Nothing about the markup here told us that we were signing up for our daily mail. In fact, that the label for sign up is an H2. So I guess, you know what, if I were voiceovering down into this, I would have hit that H2 and it would have told me I'm at the sign up for our daily mail. So that's not too bad. Maybe that would have been okay. Maybe it would have been nice if that was inside the form, but that might be a nitpick. So maybe this form isn't as bad as we thought it was from a contextually understanding what's going on. We also noticed that field sets, and specifically the legend, I guess, doesn't, on VoiceOver with the tab button at least, we got it to come up once. It told us about the field set once, but the natural indication that I used, which was tabbing through this page, didn't talk about fruit juice size. So like you can't use this to describe, right? Where Guardian is using an H2 here, we couldn't have used a field set in replacing it. But our semantic HTML was really important. All of our pages without CSS, we could still hear what they were saying and things like that. So that was cool. We also learned about how to set it up. We know that the VoiceOver settings are in this app called VoiceOver Utility. We disabled hinting under verbosity because it was giving a lot of instructions. Maybe I should go and listen to those more and learn about different techniques, but that'll be interesting for another time. We also went into preferences, and that's where we enabled VoiceOver under accessibility and VoiceOver, and we were using the Touch ID command plus Touch ID 3 times to turn VoiceOver on and off. So cool. And now we know how to play with our forms and what kind of forms show up well or I guess prompt well using VoiceOver. Neat.